to go. So a very warm welcome to everyone who is online just now. And for those of you who are watching the YouTube, then good morning or good afternoon or good evening, wherever you are. So this is, and I can't remember the number, maybe the 5th or the 6th in our series on Mahamudra prayer. And let's start, as we always do, with that little moment of adjustment, of motivation. I know motivation, motor, driving force. Have you got any? Are you being driven at this moment? Have you got any kind of inspiring, vitalizing, driving force energy going on inside you? Because if not, then please try and find some, at least. Connect up all your loving kindness, bodhicitta batteries, and shine a little bit, be bright, and please enter into these teachings, knowing they're there to help you to freedom, and through your freedom to help many, many, many others to their freedom. So we start with this bodhisattva's motivation, and including all of those beings that are part of our karma in this life, very especially, but including each and every sentient being, knowing that they are limitless, more than we could ever imagine, in number, in differences from us, so many weird and wonderful sentient beings. I mean, there's so many weird and wonderful humans, but there are beings we just couldn't even imagine, living beings like us. So anyway, we include them with great love, as much love as we can manage, and with a very joyful mind, because we're still alive, and we have this now opportunity to deepen our understanding of Dharma, not knowledge. Knowledge can be catastrophic. Our understanding of Dharma, our real feel for it in here, seeing the relevance. So let's start with some prayers. Sonje chodon soji chonom la jancho badon dane chapsenji dagi jinso jipe sanomji trola penchera sonje druparasho semchen tamche dewa dang dewe jodang dem parajoche dungal dang dungal ji jodang tralwara joche dungal me pe dewa dang pa dang men tralwara joche Yerin chatan ne tang tralwe tanyom chempola ne parajoche Doje changchen telon arodang mapa mela cheche kampopa tusum shecha kunchen kamapa chishi chunche chupa zinamdam drita sausum padan drupaso saplam chaja chela nyanepe yamme drogon dapo kajula so wandev so kajula manam chupa zeno namtare jinjilo shenlo kongji kampra sumpa shen zeno kunna chashen me patam sedya data chopi pomchenna Yeko shenpa me parajinjilo. Mogu gongji gora sumpa shin nga tego jepe namala. Jundu sowan tepe jumchena. Chamin mogu jewara jinjilo. Yengme gongji ngashira sumpa shin. Kangsha tope mo somade. Macha dekara jope gongchena. Gongcha lodan trawara jinjilo. Namto ngo chukra sumpa shin. Chiyang mayin chiyang chawana. Mangaro pachawi gongchena, kode yerme topara jinjelo. Deyata shame shamawate shameta shatru om kore marajite karota Ke ore te juwa te olo yane beshudan male malapana ye kukure kaka grase. Grasa na omke paramuke amuke shama. Dawane sawa graha bandhanane ne grihitva sava bhava pravadina vimukta marapasha savita Buddhamudra anugatita savamare butsarita parishuddhe biga shantu savamara kama. Alden sawe lama rinpoche dagye chewara pende tenshula. Kadren chempo gone jezonte kuson tuje madrup saldo sol. So in past weeks, I've spent a lot of time on one very important verse. As I explained, this is a very important verse because then nearly all the verses will follow afterwards are going into the details of what is sketched in general in this verse. And it's really a summary of Mahamudra. And we will move on from it today, although I still feel in myself that I do need to elaborate it, but never mind. Time is not limitless. I'm not limitless either. So the verse is that we spent the last couple of weeks on. Takchitatral, denni shidan, prokuritatral, somni lamchogi, sishitatral, denni dretobi, golchu mepe chudan kriparasho. And so that verse, as you've heard a couple of times, but let me just refresh your memory. I can find the paper. Is free from the extremes of eternalism and nihilism. The point of the basis is the two truths through which the supreme path of the two accumulations, free from the excesses of asserting and denying, gives the result, the good of oneself and others, free from the extremes of existence and quiescence. May I meet the unerring teaching of no mistake. So we want to get the teachings right. In an earlier verse about study, reflection, meditation, we saw in those 3 steps, we must get the understanding clear so that when we practice, we are practicing according to the Buddha's teaching. And we are, what practice is about, you develop some things, you correct some mistakes and so on. We should be doing that according to the Buddha's teachings in general, and more particularly the Mahamudra instructions. So we saw it explained basis and path and fruition. That idea we must get our head around. We can't just go on to the next verses until we really have got it. In my 3-year study course, when we get to almost to the end of the last year, then I spent a whole module, more than 50 pages, on Jamgon Kongtrul the Great's wonderful poem on basis, path, fruition, and its commentary. It's vital if you do any Vajrayana practice, either Mahamudra, as we're studying it here, or the various tantric aspects of Mahamudra, Chakrasamvara, Vajravarahi, all of those, then this understanding of basis and path and fruition is important. So we're going to indeed look at that, spend a bit of more time with this verse to go on to the next verse, which is about what we can call purification. but we can call it lots of things because it's the Tibetan verb jong, or jong, which you find in Lojong, 7-point mind training. And that verb has so many meanings. We can't find just one in an English translation. Let's call it purification for now. But before we do that, I felt very, very strongly I needed to share with you some teachings from Khenpo Sotim Jamtso Rinpoche, and please try hard to get them. I'll be using some Sanskrit words. I'll be using some Tibetan words. Some people just cloud over as soon as it goes like that. Let's wait till something interesting comes along, something that's more relevant to me in my practice. But the topic, which I need to explain a little bit through language, is so important, and so many people get it wrong. That's why we're going to get it right. So, and it's relevant to this verse that we've been looking at, because it says the basis that we're working on is an understanding of is the two truths, ultimate and relative. So remember I told you last time, it's not a question of we need to get rid of relative truths, samsara, our own mind stream, reality, and then there you are in ultimate truth, voidness. What we're heading towards, the ground, like the gold in the ore, or like the oil in the sesame, what we're heading towards is clarity about the two truths. Inseparable. Now, this is where people go wrong. And what Khenpo Sotim was explaining to us was in the context of, it's called the stages of shunyata, where we gradually ramp up our understanding of shunyata by working through the basic Buddhist schools, the deeper ones, all the way up to middle way, and then from there, Rangtong, Shentong, all of that. So he was explaining it first as philosophy, secondly as experiential. And as I said early on in this course, we have two ways of approaching Mahamudra, two ways of approaching this prayer. One is the scholar's way, where we can really explore the ideas ad infinitum, because philosophy is just endless. We can do it the philosopher's way, the study way, or we can do it the experiential way. So what I want to tell you about is, let's start with the language. It's about awareness. Not any old awareness, deepest, best awareness. Now, I'm sure somewhere most of you have come across this term, rikpa. Rikpa, right? That's the main word for awareness. And depending in Dzogchen or whatever, a lot of emphasis is placed on getting rikpa. So the pa, we can take it away. You don't need the pa at the end. It just makes it a substantive. Rik is the term. That's Tibetan. In Sanskrit, it's vidya. You've probably seen the terms vidyadharas. If you're doing refuge practice, we take refuge in vidyadhara. Dhara means hold. Vidya means awareness holders. So, vidya, awareness. In texts, you'll see sva vidya. Sva means self-awareness, sva vidya. Aware of itself, aware of oneself, self-awareness. And in Tibetan, it's wrong, Rick. Wrong is self. Wrong. Sounds nice. Wrong. Wrong, Rick. This term is a real nuisance if you're a translator, because it has two meanings, very different. But the term's the same. So I want to tell you about them briefly. One, Ranrik, Svavidya, awareness of self, happens in our stream of consciousness. Your samsaric mind stream, you. So we can sit and we can meditate. And the whole theory of Svavidya, Ranrik, is particularly held by the Yogacaryan school. Chittamatrin's mind only. And they say, look, not only does mind see and hear and think and remember, but at the same time, it knows it's seeing, or it can know it's seeing, and it can know it's hearing, and it can know it's remembering. It can be aware of itself doing things. So, of course, this is much exploited when we meditate, where one part of our mind observes another part of our mind. Many people do mindfulness, they say, it's like sitting on a riverbank and all your thoughts and feelings and memories coming by, they're like the flowing river. So we exploit Svavidya, aware of itself, with our mind in a stream of consciousness. That's one level of meaning, right? Your reality, which is unique to you, never stops, ongoing stream, different from the person next door. And you can sit and meditate and practice, and as part of your Dharma journey, you can become more and more aware of what goes on, less and less pulled into it. And then you can also become aware of the awareness itself, which I'm sure many of you have done. Watch the watcher and be aware of the awareness and all of that kind of thing. Self-awareness, self-aware, Svavidya, Svavid. Now the same term comes up in Mahamudra texts, but it's not your stream of consciousness aware of itself. It is timeless, changeless Buddha mind that knows itself. More than that, it says no one, in other words, no stream of consciousness that sees and hears and smells and tastes and touches and thinks and so on, can know Buddha mind. It's not possible. You'll never see it. You'll never hear it. That's why, it says, see like the blind, hear like the deaf, and so on. You never think it. You never experience it as an energy movement inside you. When it happens, you, stream of consciousness, shuts up. Switched off. That's why we learn to meditate. Your yapping, barking mind stops. So quiet that you can experience your Guru or Buddha, same thing. That, in fact, you don't experience, words don't work here, but you are so quiet that there is, let's call it the experience of Buddha mind knowing itself. Sva-vidya, with all its qualities, with its endless, timeless, changeless, indescribable depth and beauty. Sva-vidya. The whole point of our Mahamudra practice is to work with our stream of consciousness in many, many ways to get to a point of serenity and quietness, whereby sitting with our Guru, who is in Buddha mind at that time, then we are so quiet that our own Buddha mind, or Buddha mind, is experienced by us. Words don't work. But the Svavidya, the knowing itself, is so different. Can you nod if you're getting this? Our own relative stream of consciousness knowing itself is one thing. Being quiet and Buddha mind knowing itself is something else. Can you nod if that makes some sense? So you'll find, I won't say any names, teachers, Dharma teachers, they get this wrong because they mistake when they talk about mind's clarity and voidness. That for sitting in the stream of consciousness, and because we practice shamatha in our stream of consciousness, we learn to have a very quiet stream of consciousness. Then we're aware of that quietness. We think, oh, this is crystal clear. There's nothing going on, this quietness, this spacious, settled feeling. This is clarity and voidness. But it's an experience within the stream of consciousness. It's not the clarity and voidness of Buddha mind. I hope it's nothing to do with the verse, well it is, but I think this point I wanted to make now, leave it with you, and then over the years, I hope it's an investment that will be useful for you. That as you're having profound sacred experience, you with your teacher's help will be able to distinguish the difference between our relative consciousness knowing itself and the five wisdoms, which are the Buddha's self-knowledge that we explored in a previous course. So that's really related to the ground. I just want to say a few more words about this basis or ground. We had the three examples of gold in the ore, butter in the milk, and sesame oil in the seeds. The point is, the basis has to be there for the work to make any sense. The next verse is now going into the details of the work, which is basically this Tibetan word jhang, that we can call purification. If the basis isn't there, you can do all the purification you want, nothing will happen. So let's take a fourth example, which is water. If you want pure water, then you can take even really horrible water, like these days in many cities, they recycle the sewage. It ends up in the drinking taps. It's purified, it's treated. It's not very nice. And when it's not very well done, sometimes what comes out the tap smells like it's what went down the sewers in the first place. But no matter how dirty, just muddy, or if chemicals have gone into it, doesn't matter. You can either treat chemically, or you can pass through filters, or you can distill water and evaporate it off and take off the right temperature evaporant and all of that. You'll end up with pure water, right? But if there's no water there in the first place, you're never going to end up with water. You can take sand, you can do what the hell you like with it. You can treat it chemically, you can filter it, you can distill it if such a thing is possible. I think it needs a very high temperature to distill sand, but you'll never get water. You'll never get water. So in the Buddha nature teachings, we see the basis has to be there Buddha mind has to be the truth of your mind to make Mahamudra practice work. If it's not there, nothing's ever going to happen that will make you Buddha. Buddha needs to be within. It's not acquired from outside. What the Maitreya's teachings tell us is it is not acquired anew. It's the same after all the practice as it was before you even started practicing. It never changed. It's there. It is the true nature of our mind. So we're going to explore this now in the next verse. Please, when you've got a bit of free time, look at the structure to see how we're now plunging into the details. So we're now looking generally at what we call purification, but then in the verses afterwards, we're going to look in a bit more detail about what's in lines 1, 2, 3, and 4 of this verse. So let me give you the transmission. I did last week, but I'll do it again. Zhangji, Semni Salton Zhongjukla, Zhongche Chagchen Dojin Naljoche, Zhangza, Lowara Trupi Drimanam, Zhangre, Tritral, Choku Manjura Sho. The basis to be purified is mind itself, the union of clarity and voidness. The purifier is the great Vajra yoga of Mahamudra, through which the object of purification, the stains of accidental illusion, is purified. May the purified result, the stainless Dharmacharya, be made manifest. Again, a very, very rich verse. So it says the basis. So now we're back with the basis. But to be purified. Now, this word jongwa, what does it mean? It can mean purify. So when something's, it can mean to purify. It can also mean to develop skill and mastery. Because as we purify our mind, first of all, we're learning to work with the mind. So we're getting mastery, but also we become masters of ourselves. We are no longer the puppets of our history, where our habits of all sorts take us sometimes where we don't want to go. We take charge of our mind. And in the Mahamudra way, as we'll see in more and more verses, this is quite subtle because we're not taking control of our mind and being like, I'm master of myself. And, so every moment I'm only doing what I want to do and all that kind of focus. We're not. We are letting our mind, we're learning how to master it by stopping it running wild and enable it to settle into its own truth. It's very, very subtle. So although Jhang means that to master, to take control, to acquire mastery, is not in the sense of controlling, mastering in the obvious sense. It means training as well. So very often when this same word comes up, lojong, people call it mind training, 7-point mind training, jong. So anyway, here, it's more like purification. Now, why is this? And it's sort of before we look into the words of this particular verse and go through them, stage by stage. I need to make some adjustments. Then I need to explain something. It does come in this verse, so it's in a later line. But earlier on, I talked about the stream of consciousness and pure mind. And so the way they're described in the Buddha nature teachings are like two continuums. There's our line of consciousness, which is our samsara. And all the time that's been happening over all of our lifetimes, all this lifetime up to now, right now, while our own movie story experience is happening, parallel with it is the presence of Buddha mind, which never changes, it's perfectly pure, and so on. So in those teachings, the nature of the relative mind is totally different from the nature of Buddha mind. The relative mind has what are famous in Dharma as the three marks of existence. Our relative samsaric consciousness is impermanent. It changes all the time. It suffers, so suffering is the second mark. When you are free, you can see that even happy, well-off samsaric minds are suffering because they're missing the truth of their free Buddha nature. So even when people go through good times, impermanent good times, relatively it's a suffering, but even then it goes hand in hand with suffering. If you go up, you'll go down, and so on. And then the third mark of existence, there is no lasting persona, no self. So our relative consciousness is changing, suffering, and there is no real lasting identity. The Buddha mind is unchanging. It has no suffering, and it's our true identity. The first bit is the most important, it's unchanging. Buddha mind is unchanging. It's the five wisdoms, it's the kayas, it's everything we study as Buddha. There all the time, here all the time. So that changeless nature is very different from the changing nature of our consciousness. The problem is we are totally pickled in our consciousness, stream of consciousness. We're fascinated by seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, thinking, remembering, fantasizing. It doesn't stop. So this verse is about purification. And purification means basically getting rid of the samsaric mind. Or let's say, rather than getting rid of it, getting out of it. I hope we're doing okay so far. Let me stop for 2 seconds of coffee, because otherwise it's just non-stop pummeling of ideas. So purifying means getting out of samsara, getting rid of samsara. So like I said earlier on, these two levels, what's happening relatively, what's happening ultimately. We've got really two levels of purification. We've got the work we can do inside our stream of consciousness, your karma, who you are, how you experience, the way you experience it, how you feel, all of that. We can make that better and better, purer and purer. We have all sorts of methods for doing that. The basic one is to learn to only do good, to make good karmas, because that's going to make the future better and better. Good karma in itself is the remedy for past bad karma. If we protect lives, that's good karma, but it also purifies our bad karma of harming life, and so on. So we have many ways, we have practices for purifying our karma, doing good works, and so on. And then we have meditation practice, whereby we learn to take more control of our mind, and the mind itself feels cleaner, purer. We don't let it go into resent, self-pity, blame, things like that. So we have many ways of working with the relative mind to make it a better and better relative mind. Now, in particular, in there, then we have 3 or 4, let's say 3 areas in which we purify. And they sound quite funny in Tibetan, but we don't need to go there. First 2 are called Dik and Drip. So you get Dik, Drip, Nye Tung. So Nye Tung doesn't sound, but Dik and Drip in English sounds really not so good. So these are the not so good things we need to purify. Dik, Dikpa, means the harm that's in our mind, the nasty, naughty, dark, evil bit of us that resents, hates, blames, and gets us into trouble again and again. It's all that famous list of lust and desire and anger, resent, and pride and jealousy, and fostering ignorance. That's active. That's now. That's causing trouble. That's the dik. Drip is the karma that you made because of your past diks, your past dark, evil, naughty mind, caused you to hurt other people, harm yourself. That made karma. And so drip in itself means obscurations. So we can say like evil is dik, drip means obscuration. So we've clouded our mind, we've obscured our mind, and in particular, we've obscured the truth from our mind. We've taken ourselves into darkness. We can't see the truth. So we can purify both of those, our ongoing diks, our habits, and our ongoing drips, living with the results of our karma. How can we deal with that? Being who we are with the misfortunes we have and so on. And then the third thing that we are dealing with, very important for Dharma people, are broken promises. Broken vows, from refuge through bodhicitta vows, through Vajrayana, Samaya vows, and so on. Whatever we did in past lives, which dishonored those vows, usually has powerful consequences on our karma. And sometimes it only comes up, it's not like dik and drip, they come up as your everyday feelings and reactions to people, the dik and the drip. The obscurations, they come up as your life circumstances and how they make you feel. But sometimes the broken samaya will only come up in special circumstances. Anyway, there are things we, as we were in the past, not us now, that's all finished, but whoever we were before, mistaken, we have means now as Dharma people, good people, well-motivated people, to work with that. It's a long job. It's a long job. Many, many, many lifetimes. It will get better and better, but there's no quick fix. There really isn't. So that's one level area of purification within the relative stream of consciousness. But there's a second level, which is what Mahamudra is about, which is about getting your mind out of its absorption with this stream of consciousness. So whatever's going on in there, as the karma is still playing itself out, as it will do lifetime after lifetime, as your reactions to your karma, your mind habits are carrying on, getting better, purifying, of course, but no matter what's going on in your relative story, Mahamudra and Dzogchen teach us how to get out, not be involved with it. See it for what it is, from a place of Buddha mind. Okay. Now this is, you say, it's our Buddhist view in the Kagyu school. For instance, in Theravada school and the Shravaka traditions, they don't have the Buddha nature idea. The idea there is it's just suffering. None of it's worth it. That's true. But their idea is get out. That's true. Good idea. Get out of samsara. But just switch it all off until there is eternal peace. Total peace. Our understanding is that our basis that we want to achieve, like getting the gold from the ore, or like getting pure water to drink or to use in an experiment, is that our basic nature is Buddha with all the qualities, not just quiet, all the enlightened qualities. So here the first line says the basis to be purified is mind itself. This mind, so now, what's going on? I need to use language again. The Sanskrit word for mind, in this case, is chitta. There are three main words for mind, but this one is chitta, as in bodhicitta. So it doesn't say the basis for purification is chitta. It doesn't say that. It says the basis for purification is chittata. There's a ta on the end, and that changes everything. I spoke about it last week, the difference between shunya, empty, void, and shunyata, voidness, emptiness. So we're looking at chittata, which is the mindiness of mind. Right? Sorry, there's not really any way to say this. You can translate it as mind itself, but that can be confusing. It's the mindiness of mind, just like the stickiness of jam, or any of those ness words. So, and remember, the basis is the two truths. This mind, which has its relative persona story going on, but which was always, in truth, Buddha. Those two continue a running parallel. The mindiness, the way all that works. So it's dynamic. It's not something static. Those two, always present. Some people use the term co-emergent or innate, doesn't matter. Those two is what we're trying to get at. So that basis that we want to get at is now defined as what? The union of voidness and clarity. That's where we're going. That's the basis we want to bring out. The gold, the pure water, that mind, whether it's ultimate mind or the relative story of you, is at all times, in truth, voidness and clarity. We use two words, but then we mess ourselves up intellectually by saying, but they're inseparable. You say there are two things. Two things means two things. And then we say they're inseparable, well, that's one thing. And if you really can't separate them, that's one thing. It's not easy. People repeat the words. I know people who love repeating the words. They can rattle it out. Oh, the union of voidness and clarity. If you stop them in their tracks, say, what the hell do you mean? Excuse me. Union, so you got two things. Well, how are they union? Is it like these erotic statues? You got two things that are fiddling around with each other? Or then you say the inseparability. But if you can't separate them, it means you can't tell one from the other. Can't we just give them one name? Like Mr. and Mrs. Smith. Can't we just call them the Smiths? Or something. So we can think and philosophize a lot. But what we're going to do in Mahamudra is meditate intelligently and try and understand what clarity and voidness mean. So Khenpo Sultim used to say, all of this is, you need to know, but you need to know that humans need to know. And this is what they need to know, so they can go beyond any need to know anything. Right? So he said, take the example of a candle flame. From our point of view, as analysts, we can say, it has shape. We can also say, it's warm, it's hot. We can also say, it's illuminating, it gives light. We could make 3 or 4 or 5 or twofold analysis of a flame. But the reason it gives light is because it's hot, and it's the hot bit that gives it its shape. You can't separate it, and it just is. But we humans need to analyze and distinguish and attribute qualities and labels. So we need to do this. It's quite valid. The Buddha taught it. In order to free our mind, we need to get the thinking straight. So from our point of view, we talk about citta ta, the mindiness of mind, as having those two qualities. Let's take the clarity first. It means in each moment, what manifests to you, like just now, you're in a Ken Holmes talk, right? So you're probably watching a screen and hearing sounds, and what's manifesting is clear. It's there. It's vivid. Clear means it's kind of vividly present. But then the next moment it's gone. It was clear, and then it's gone. It's new sounds, new words, new ideas, new images. And that moment that was gone. Where did it go? Is there a huge parking lot of yesterday's ideas where they're building up and building up, like in a landfill? No. It didn't really go, because going means you go somewhere. It just went, disappeared. Then, let's give myself enough time, 10 seconds from now, the vivid mind experience of seeing, hearing, smelling, thinking, whatever, where is that just now? It's nowhere. But it will happen. Maybe that was it already. And in the moment it happens, it's all there is. That's your world. It's 360 degrees, full wrap, Dolby, stereo, trio, quadrupio. It's full on. The vividness of citta, the mind, is the citta, what the mind's doing is mindingness in that moment, and then it's gone. So because there's nothing there you can grasp ever, then we say it's devoid of any lasting reality. It doesn't have one. There's nothing you can seize on to say that's it, because it's gone. Where are you going to go and find it to say what it was? So each moment of our living experience is like that. When it happens, it's quite clear. And in this sense of clarity, it just means it's vividly happening. I think in one extreme case, you could even apply this to deep sleep. If your practice, Mahamudra practice or Tummo practice, is very deep, then the depth of deep sleep is known. We could say it's vividly clear because it's the isness of the moment, it's what's happening. Even though it's deep gone, it's what's happening. I don't know if that makes sense. Maybe it wasn't wise to take such an extreme example. But whether you're in heaven, whether you're in hell, whether you're in some kind of samadhi or meditation practice, that moment, each moment, is what it is with all of its characteristics, seeming characteristics, but then it's gone before you can even pin anything down. So it's clear, it manifests, it is devoid of anything. So there, the voidness, the shunyata, doesn't mean it's nothing. Like in this moment, there may be a relative you. You are talking to your son or daughter. There's a relative persona. Now there. But it has no lasting nature. It's very vivid, the relative I. It's why Buddha could say to his disciples, in a past life, you were my brother. He's not Buddha, who's a bit of a nervous wreck about saying I. He doesn't need to say, this stream of consciousness that had the name of, that has presently the name of Gautama, was what worldly people call a brother for this stream of the five aggregates that he just says, you were my brother. So relatively, in the relative continuum, something is vividly there, but it has no lasting true reality. It's just a changing, ever-changing story, two truths. So this union of voidness and clarity, because the more in meditation, with the finest meditator's mind we have, as we are at one with what is manifesting in the moment, it is clear, but then it's like a dream, it's like a mirage, has no own substance. So we learn about that, and we work with that through Mahamudra techniques, very skillfully, very systematically. It's a labor of love, but it needs the labor in the actual practice of Mahamudra. So what we're working on when it says the basis to be purified is mind itself, cittata, the way mind is. We don't have a mind that's there as, like a block of metal on a bench, something you can work with. Otherwise, they would have said citta, mind. The basis is mind. It's what mind dynamically is doing each moment, cittata, the mindiness. So then, why are we purifying it? It's because we're suffering. We're in samsara, the relative stream of consciousness that's there has us enthralled, has us as its victim. We are, in the text they say, we are in bondage, we are in shackles, we are prisoners of our historical mind. So the reason we do purify is because Buddha mind, which is the truth of ourselves, has always been there, and it's free from suffering, and it's so beneficial for all other beings. So then, how do we purify it? The next line says, the purifier is the great Vajra yoga of Mahamudra. The verses we still have to deal with in this text will explain this more. So anyway, we're going to use Mahamudra. Mahamudra mainly in the sense of what is called view. So the verse after this then goes into view, meditation, action, result. So what I've been saying, gradually we're unpacking this, going deeper and deeper. But when it says what we use is Mahamudra, if we look at it very generally, we could understand this verse in one way. So let's do that first and then go beyond it. So in one way, with Mahamudra, most people who train do mudra first, preliminaries, the foundations. The foundations are absolutely vital and necessary purifiers. When we do refuge, we purify our habit of taking refuge in our ego, selfishness, self-centeredness, and we place our trust in what is worthy of our trust. We do prostrations, which purify so much of our physical karma, harmful physical karma from the past, where we've damaged other beings' lives and killed them, where we've stolen from them, where we've had sexual misconduct in the past. Then Vajrasattva practice takes us very deep into the purifying of mind, and in particular of this main component of mind, big troublemaker, which is that our mind goes where it wants. For a meditator, we call that distraction. Distraction means your mind's not under your control. So simple. You're telling it, pebble. Oh, what can we have? So nice here, crystal. Be with the crystal in an undistracted way. That's your only focus, nothing else. Anything else is a distraction. So once we start trying to do that, the mind goes here, it goes there, it remembers this, it fantasizes that, starts getting interested in the crystal and analyzing all sorts of things. We see, as we learn to meditate, that our mind is not under our control. So with Vajrasattva practice, which is a wonderful purifier, we use the power of our connection with the Guru and the lineage, but in particular the power of one-pointedly focusing our mind, so that this main vector of getting us into samsara and into trouble, the mind that gets pulled into stuff, that gets involved, we break the habit. The only place we remain is right in the heart of our Guru. Beautiful purification. And then we're miserable so-and-so in one way or another. So then in the offering mandala practice, we learn about joy. And we learn about the joy of letting go. The joy of letting go. At first, for a beginner, letting go doesn't sound like a joy. It's like a child's, what they call it, comforter, dummy. Don't take it away. You need to suck on it. need. We have needs. All sorts, psychological, material, and so on. In the mandala offering, this age-old habit we learn to let go of, to offer ourselves totally, and then that includes the chur practice. And then with the Guru Yoga, we learn how to connect with the blessing of all of those who've done this before and who've discovered their Buddha mind. So we have the foundations which purify our relative stream of consciousness. But then we go on to what's called the actual practice of Mahamudra. There it's got its own preparations in a way. We need to do many steps of shamatha to still the mind, stabilize the mind. Then various steps of what are called vipassana or insight meditation. But it takes us to a point where we learn to default into Buddha mind. It becomes our default state through the blessing of the Guru. So there we are purifying, and that's the one we call Mahamudra, after the general foundations and then the shamatha, the vipassana. We actually purify the main habit, which is getting involved with samsara. We change that for getting involved with Buddha mind. Just letting that be, letting it be. It is. Let it be. So that is what is meant here by the great Vajra yoga of Mahamudra, is the purifier. But of course, we can't just switch that on. You can't buy it on Amazon. You can't get it through any kind of trick. You have to do the work of the foundations of shamatha and of vipassana. But then what we're talking about here is that when you get the introduction to Buddha mind with your guru, and you learn to return to that more and more for longer and longer times until there's a flip over, and that becomes your default nature. So then that default nature is the great Vajra yoga. Our present Tai Situpa explains the word yoga here. He says nothing to do with what most Westerners think of as yoga. It's not hatha yoga, which is physical and to do with postures. He says here the word yoga actually means application in the sense of integration. You integrate your awareness moment by moment with Buddha mind. So it's yoga in that sense. Yuk. Yoga comes from the Sanskrit root yuk. It's quite useful in English because our word yoke, if you have two oxen pulling a cart and you've got this wooden yoke that goes around each of their necks, the yoke that joins them, that word yoke comes from the Indo-European root yuk, which is the root of the word yoga. So it means joining, integrating, applying Mahamudra. So it's called Vajra yoga because we are joining our mind with what never changed. Vajra means never changed. Vajra, the mythical weapon of Indra, Lord of the gods, is a weapon that cannot be defeated by anything, any other weapon, but that can destroy everything else. So it's very relevant here. By resting in Buddha mind, all of the diks and the drips and the other things which are our samsaric mind are dealt with. You don't need to get in there and sort each one. By resting in the Buddha mind, when these things come, they evaporate. Tilopa says it's like steam coming out of a geyser in the ground. They come with such force. Chittata, the mindiness, brings up stuff, but then by resting in the nature of mind, it just becomes steam that dissolves in space again and again. So this is our main purifier. We're not talking about the normal relative level purification so much as the actual practice and mastery of Mahamudra once we got that far. What we see when we look at other texts, for instance, when we look at the stages of the path up to Buddhahood, we get the worldly stages of the path, but then we get the 10 bodhisattva levels. How do you go from level 1 to level 2, level 2 to level 3, and so on? What makes the progress? It is by remaining in the Buddha nature of mind. Gradually, the dips, the drips, all of the history evaporates, and then finer levels evaporate, very subtle levels evaporate, and depending on the subtlety of the level that's gone, then we move from one stage of bodhisattva to the next. So that's the purifier. It's Mahamudra itself. And then the third line says the object of purification. So, and it calls them the stay-ins of accidental illusion. So it says the object is purified. You might wonder why there's an is purified. So it is, the grammar is the object of purification is purified. And the object is a plural, the stay-ins of accidental illusion. Now, this word, accidental, is somewhere, I remember digging it out in the 1970s and 80s, somewhere in Western philosophy, it's got a special meaning, which is what we have here. Some people, for this word in English, they translate it as adventitious. Whatever English word we use, it means something that can be present and have an effect, but an effect that will not change the basic value of something. So, for instance, dust on a mirror. You can't see the reflection so well, but the mirror itself is not changed by the dust. You can remove the dust and the mirror is the same. So in Tibetan is simply lo vorwa. Lo vorwa means passing, transient, fleeting. It comes, it happens, but it can't affect. So when we go into this in detail in the Buddha nature teachings, it says all the fires in the universe, including the big fire when the whole universe goes up in smoke. I mean, for us, it's when the sun comes to its end, burns up all the planets and so on. It says no fire ever burnt it at all. No water ever drowned it, rusted it, did anything, damage to it. None of the elements. This chittata, this mind itself, even when chitta, the mind, has been in hell, the true nature of our mind, the goodness, the Buddha, the kindness, the serenity, the total clarity of wisdom, the compassion, was never damaged by the experience of being totally psychotic in hell. Nothing that ever happened in hundreds, thousands of lifetimes could ever touch this Buddha mind. So there is an incredible difference in nature between what happens in the relative mind and the Buddha mind. The Buddha mind is changeless, spotless, cannot be corrupted. So when we talk about what we're getting rid of, the focus, the object of our purification, it is all these temporary things that happened in our history, but that can't, accidental means they can't damage who we truly are, but they happened. And they happened as illusion. But the word delusion here, it means more like a hypnosis, the hypnotic power of samsaric illusion. And then it says stains. Now, this word, sorry to go on so much about words, but they do tell us a lot. Maybe everyone's saturated already. Maybe I need another 2 seconds of coffee. In regular Dharma, dealing with our relative selves, then we've got virtue and non-virtue. Good things where we help each other, virtue. Harmful things where we damage each other, non-virtue. Both of those are known as stains. So this word stain is a bit particular. Anything that is dualistic, helpful, harmful, good, bad, good karma, bad karma, good results, bad results, so on, is known as a stain. You know, like when you get a garment, lovely, clean piece of white silk, and you get a ball pen stain on it or something, stain. So what stains our mind relatively are good things and bad things. They keep us in samsara. So when we did the teachings on the 6 paramita, we saw that they are paramita. Para means get you out. Only when we go beyond the duality. You know, generosity, just ordinary generosity won't get you out. Being very generous. Right conduct, beautifully conducted, won't get you out of samsara. It'll make you lovely samsara. It won't get you out. It's only when we go beyond the duality. So whenever there's duality, we say stain. In an earlier verse, we expanded duality, subject, object, into triplicity, subject, object, interaction. Whenever there's that, we talk about stains. It's the story of how we created our story, our samsara, with the good and the bad that's happening right now. But it's a relative person's story. And the whole thing is like a dream, it's like a hypnosis. So this is what we are, the focus of our purification. Very simple. All of that samsaric chittata, mindedness, is going to be dealt with by resting in the Buddha mind. Good or bad, up and down, wherever you are, all of that, the remedy is to transcend it and be within the truth of Buddha mind. So then the result of that is Dharmakaya without the stains, without the duality, without the story that we're involved with of me and it, me and you, me and them. It's gone. It's no longer there. So Dharmakaya is the result. So today we did do another verse, and it's this verse about purification. But then the next verse is we're going to develop this verse a little bit more. Gradually we're getting there. And if sometimes you'd like to know more about this verse or the verse we did before, you'll probably find the information is coming as we do plunge into the detail. So let me just check. Oh yeah, something else I wanted to say. Let me give myself a couple of more minutes if you can bear it. So I started off with this teaching from Khenpo Sotim Jamso. You remember? Sva Vijja, self-awareness. So I want to tell you one classical Mahamudra story very quickly to do with that. Many of you have heard it. But anyway, our relative mind can be aware of itself, and it can find its own clarity, and it can understand the impermanence of everything and so on. So we can think, working with our relative stream of consciousness, that we have reached a state of clarity and voidness. We can think, because we do shamatha very, very well with our relative mind, we can have long moments of no thought, just peace. And then the very nature of shamatha, when the mind is without thought, what it does to your inner energy body is it makes you feel blissful beyond belief. So the story is of a man who was practicing Mahamudra in India, if I remember correctly, as far as the story goes. And he thought, that's it. He'd reached, what can we call it, a state, a level of mastery. No thought, bliss, and what seemed to him clarity and voidness. And so he thought, this is wonderful. And he spent many years in that state, feeling he'd achieved Mahamudra. Then he died. Well, we all die. He was reborn as a cat because he got it wrong. Mahamudra is about resting in the Buddha mind, not a particular mastery of the stream of consciousness. So, a cat, let's say, can be blissful, and doesn't need to think. So that's one cautionary tale from the stories, from the traditional lineage stories, about not mixing up this clarity of self-awareness within your samsaric mind and the real meaning of Svavidya in Mahamudra, which is the Buddha mind is present, knowing itself. It's a very, very beautiful Arabic verse by Ibn al-Arabi about this topic, Sufi verse. It says, I better not quote it if I can't quote it exactly right, but he's saying this, by what can it be known? Only by itself, because it can be known by none other than it. It's the same idea. Our relative consciousness can't know, observe, experience Buddha mind. All our relative consciousness can do is shut up, and then Buddha mind is there. So there's a very well-known analogy in Dharma, especially in far, far Eastern Dharma, which is that of the finger pointing at the moon. So in the story, I'm sure you all know it, the master points to the moon and says, that's it. And people are looking at his finger and thinking, that's it then. The master's finger is what it's all about. It's the moon. So the master is pointing and saying, that's it. And people think it's the finger. So we have words, Dharma words, which are our blessing and our teacher, about clarity and voidness, and about the nature of mind, and about the 4 stages of Mahamudra, and so on. We can get them so wrong. Because what we are looking at is not what when we apply them in our meditation, and we think, this is clarity. This is voidness. This is no thought. The finger that we're looking at is our own ideas, our own preconceptions, our own preformed ideas of Dhammakaya, Dhammadhatu, of clarity, of emptiness, and so on. We're looking at the finger. We're not looking, and we're looking at the words, you see. If you can catch it, you'll see its thoughts. It's mind activity, conceptual activity, where you're in the state, and I'm telling you, this is clarity, clear. This is Svavidya, and it's not. It's not. So anyway, that's it for today. Let's dedicate anything that was good and useful. This is all food for thought. It's not cooked yet. I think I've given you some raw supplies for you to cook over the coming years. It's a lot of food for thought. But whatever was good and helpful, let's dedicate the benefit to everybody. And in particular, today, there are a couple of requests for particular dedication. And so Kim has asked if we can dedicate for Brian and his wife Pamela and their girls Sophie and Katie. And I think we all have people close to us who are very unwell, going through a tough time, or dying, or just dead. So let's think of those also very particularly. Sonam diye tamche zikpani, topne nye pedranam pamchene, je ganachi palap, truk paye, tsipe, sole, drowa rasho, janchub semcho rimpoche, majepa nam jejo chik, jepa nyampa mepadam, komne, konglu, kalwaresho, gewadi nyodwada, chaja chempo drupjone, drowa chikjang malupa, te sala, kaparasho.